What's up, creators? Full transparency, this video is pretty much for all the creators that have purchased my Creative Ryan LUT. So salute to you if you do have it. If you don't have it, click the link down below. Go consider maybe picking it up. This video isn't only about having my LUT, it's also color grading, it's little tips and tricks, and it will probably bring you some value if you continue to watch. I'm going to be applying my Creative Ryan LUT to some Sony footage, some Canon footage, and some Lumix footage. I usually use my Creative Ryan LUT on neutral footage, being that I shoot mostly vlogs and stuff on YouTube, and that's when I use my Creative Ryan LUT. Let me show you how I apply my LUT onto all these different cameras and their footage, and also how I tweak them to make it look my style. So before I move forward, I just want to say I designed this LUT specifically so that I could use it on all my different YouTube footage for like vlogs and different stuff like that, because I didn't want to waste a lot of time. I wanted to be able to shoot my videos or shoot my vlogs and put them all together and drop one cohesive color over top of all of it and hit export and move on quickly. And I designed this LUT over a period of maybe like 3-4 years with different cameras, using the neutral picture profile on Canon with a 1DX Mark II, a 5D, a 6D Mark II, a 6D Mark I. I was developing this LUT for years and kind of just figuring out my style, and then I put it up for sale. So that's why I made this LUT in the first place, just because I wanted to be able to throw it on anything or throw it at anything and it looked good, whether it's a music video, vlog, YouTube video, even this video right here, I'm using the color on it as well. But then I got the question of how do I make it look like yours? I'm using Sony and I know you use Canon, so let me show you. It's pretty easy to do all this stuff. So this is a Sony clip right here. This is the Sony FX30, and if I take this off, you see it goes back to that, and that is my LUT plus some tweaks. And then if you come here, you take the S-Log3 gamut. I don't know. This is what I shot it in. If I take that LUT off, conversion LUT, this is what it looks like flat. So over here, we got the Canon R5. Let's take off the Canon log look. Now let's take off everything, and there you go, it's flat. This right here is a C70 clip. So let's take all the color off right there. And then right here, we can take off the C-Log3 conversion, and there you can see it's flat right there. This right here is the FX30 from Sony. Again, let's take off the S-Log3 conversion, and let's take off my LUT and my tweaks. And then this right here is the Lumix GH4, I believe. It might be the GH4, GH5. I think it's the GH4 if I'm not mistaken. GH4, GH5, Lumix footage. It was shot in Vlog. So come to the inspector, take the Vlog conversion off, and let's take off my color grades, and that's what you got, flat. All right, let's start from the top. Let's start on the Sony clip right here, because I think this is a really clean clip from that FX30. Again, my LUT was designed on Canon footage, but this is Sony footage. So let's see how it looks after I tweak it up. First of all, I use a conversion LUT. So over here in Final Cut, doesn't matter which editing program you're using, you can apply a conversion LUT to any of your footage, whether it's Sony, Canon, Lumix, whatever. Let's go here, camera LUT, and we're going to do the S-Log3 S-Gamut 3 Cine, and then it brings it back with some contrast and some saturation. There's still room to improve this clip though. I'm going to use this one right here just because my arm is in focus really nicely, and you can see my tattoos, so it looks cool. Come back here, you see I got a LUT. I also have a hue versus saturation curves, which is basically all your different hue versus hue, hue versus saturation, hue versus luma. Then I also have a color wheels to add in a little color into the shadows. But let's just start with adding in a LUT. Come down to color, and find custom LUT. We're going to drag custom LUT over top of that, which I've already done up here, but I'm just showing you from the top. So I've added the Creative Ryan LUT right here, and you can take the intensity down and all the way up. Usually, if I'm using neutral picture profile on Canon, I use 0.65, so around 65% on the mix. So let's do 0.65. That already looks good to me, I would say. Even just with the quick conversion and then dropping the LUT right on top of the footage, I think that looks good. But there's room. We can do more things, right? Personally, I would add maybe a little bit more into this footage, just because the footage after adding the conversion LUT was still pretty much washed out looking. It was still not that contrasty. So I think this 0.8 looks good right here. Then what I notice is it's a little orangish yellow, and I don't like it to be too orangish yellow. I like my skin tones to look good. All I'm going to do is I'm going to add a hue versus saturation curves onto this clip right underneath or above the Creative Ryan LUT. I'm going to grab this dropper, and I'm going to grab right on my skin on the hue versus hue, and I want to push it towards the red. As you can see, it's a little tiny shift. It's really orangish right here. Boom, towards the reddish. It just makes my skin tone look a little bit more natural, more not so orangish and like, I know you've heard it probably before, but Oompa Loompa looking, but it makes it like a little bit more natural, orangish reddish. Then I'm going to come down to the hue versus saturation. I'm going to click on this eyedropper and I want to bring this down to make it feel a little bit more natural, not so bright. I'm not in real life super like saturated, right? We're not. So you have to find that perfect space for skin tones. You don't want it to be like that, bro. You don't want it to be like that. So we're gonna bring it down, and I personally think about right there is good for me. So if we take that off, you can see the difference. Bring it back, you can see the difference. We still got this orange popping, but my skin tones are looking a little bit better right there. And it's just a slight shift right there. Every camera is gonna be different, whether it's Sony, Lumix, or Canon. All the colors are gonna be different little shades, and you're gonna have to make some type of little tiny adjustments with the hue versus hue and the hue versus saturation. So personally, I would roll with this. This looks good to me. That looks fine. Sometimes when I'm in my office, I like to add some blues into my shadows. And if you know me, then you probably already know this. I click here and I add another color wheels, and then I'm going to click this up here for an add color mask. And then I'm gonna just come right here and drag over top of my skin, just like that. And this is gonna be rough. I'm not gonna go in depth with this, but let's just kind of get the oranges. I wanna select all these oranges, right? I don't want the blacks. I want I want those blacks back there to not be affected that much. I want just the skin tones. So all the whites right there. Now, just rough, real quick. That looks good to me. We're going to click in here. We're not going to do the inside because that's my skin tones. We're going to do the outside. You could just move this around to add some blues into those shadows. You see that right there? I like to add some blues. Personally, I come down here to the shadows and I hit the drop down and I come to the green and I do around, was it like 6, I believe? And then on the blues, I do about 8. And that kind of gives me a perfect blue tint in my shadows. If I take this off, you can see it there. If I add it, you can see it's just got a nice little hint of blues in the shadows over top of my Creative Ryan LUT, which just makes the sauce go crazy in this office. So let's run that. And you can see what it looks like. Even sometimes I also come back to this hue versus saturation curves. I'll come down to the saturation versus saturation. I'll make a mark about right here, and then I will drag this all the way down. If you pay attention to the colors in the background, the blacks, this brings all the saturation out of the black, so it makes it pure black. So back here, you got the warm tones in the blacks. If I got it up, if I bring it down, it makes those blacks pure black and takes any color saturation out of the blacks. It just makes it look just a little bit better and just a little bit more swaggy, my style, that dark, moody tone. Light, subtle blues in the shadows, and the skin tones just pop. Bring it right there to the loyalty tattoo. If we take everything off, and then we take the S-Log Rec 709 conversion LUT off, you see what it looks like. Super flat, super ugly. Add that, bring that back in, and it just makes this shot look really nice. Like this looks clean. Sony FX30. All right, I realized that I forgot to show the neutral picture profile like this that I use on Canon typically when I'm using my Creative Ryan LUT. I wanted to let you know why I use a neutral picture profile more often than log. For me, it's just easier and faster to use neutral than to use log and have to convert it or color it from scratch sometimes. I've always liked my footage to look super contrasty, so having it already contrasted without having to add the contrast back, sometimes it just looks a little bit better with the contrast, a little bit more darker, a little bit more moodier, just kind of better in my opinion as well. Not only that, there's another tip as well. You need to make sure your white balance looks right. This white balance right here is a 5600 because I have the daylight coming in and I usually kind of use daylight all the time. But there's some scenarios where you're gonna have to tweak your Kelvin to get the white balance right to make this LUT come to life on your footage. If it's a cloudy day, you might want to set your white balance to cloudy so it's a little bit warmer. Or if you're in a building where there's like tungsten lights and it's really orange looking, you might want to cool down your white balance to make it more balanced. You don't want it to be too orange, you don't want it to be too cold and blue. You want it to be right in the middle. You want your whites to look white, so make sure your white balance is correct before you apply this Creative Ryan LUT and expect it to look great. It doesn't even matter about my LUT. You have to get your white balance right regardless. All right, let's get back to the tutorial. Okay, here we have the Canon R5 footage, middle of the day, terrible conditions, but I still made it work. So come over here to the inspector. Sometimes I color my footage by myself with the contrast and the saturation, but there's also a lot of times where I just come through and I hit the conversion LUT on these and I just go from there. So the conversion LUT on this, I shot this in C-Log. I didn't shoot it in C-Log 3, so I would do Canon log right here. Final Cut has the built-in conversion LUTs, which is pretty cool and really helpful. So Canon log, pretty much looking good. The whites are blowing out over here, but obviously like I had to shoot it that way so that I could keep my shadows details right here. The lighting scenario here was bad, but the view was beautiful. Anyway, come in here. I'm just going to apply all of my effects that I already added on just to show you what happens. That's with my Creative Ryan LUT right here at the top. Let's just take everything off and let me break it down to you. Add the Creative Ryan LUT, which gives it a very desaturated look. That's my style. It makes the greens a little more yellowish, and it also takes the blues down really low, but it'll pop your skin tone. So I have this at a 0.9. Like I said, sometimes it's different. Majority of the time it is 0.65 on neutral picture profile footage from Canon. That's how I designed it. That's how I've been using it forever. But when it comes to log footage, sometimes it's different. So it looks good. It's super saturated, and I want to add some more saturation into this specific clip. So I used a color wheels to bring back saturation right here. And also if you come in, you can see I brung down the midtones. So bring it back, bring it forward just to punch those blacks and shadows down. And then here, the highlights, I ever so slightly just brought them down. And then here you can see I added some saturation right there. After that, I added another color wheels right here. Boom. If you come in and look, I've just added some warmth into the highlights. So it goes from this to adding some warmth into the highlights. And this is just how I wanted to stylize and color this specific clip. Then I come into the hue versus saturation. I make a couple tweaks. What I did is I changed the hue of the blues ever so slightly. I made them a little bit towards the aqua blues. And then right here, I did a bunch of stuff. I brung down these yellows and stuff out of the grass back there so it wouldn't look too crazy saturated. Also up the blues a little bit so you could see them and they weren't totally gone out of this clip because the sky was beautiful and blue. Didn't want to take it all the way out, even though that's kind of my style. And then I come down here, the saturation versus saturation. I brought down the saturation in the blacks as well. Last but not least, on this clip, I went and found the vignette effect that's just in the effect somewhere, and I added this on just to give a vignette around the image because it's so bright. I wanted the outskirts and around the edges of the clip to be a little bit more dark. And that's how I came up with this color grade. These cars are so loud out there. This can looks good, right? The purple vibe in here, and then this red pop, it looks good. Bubbly, bubbly, whatever, bubbly, whatever it is. Holla at me. All right, let me take all these off and just show you what I would do just with my LUT. Boom, let's come in here, grab custom LUT, bring it in, add the Creative Ryan LUT onto it. Usually I do it at 0.65, which doesn't look terrible. Let's see. Let's just do the 0.65 like I would usually say. And then we're gonna add in a color wheels because we need to add some contrast, some more contrast to this. It still looks flat and washed out and no saturation. Workspace, coloring space. We're gonna make this waveform bigger. As you can see right here, the blacks need to be crushed down and the whites are crushed up here in the clouds. I told you already, I messed that up. So let's bring the blacks down until they hit that line that I've set. I've set a line right here at 3 instead of 0, just so it doesn't go all the way down to 0 and crush them to be pure black. So let's bring it down to that line, that 3 right there. And that looks pretty good right there. And then let's bring these highlights down because they were crushed up there. Let's try to bring those back a little bit as much as we can. Then let's bring in some saturation. That looks cool, but it's just a little bit too saturated for me. But that is with the Creative Ryan LUT and some adjustments to the exposure and the saturation. Definitely way too saturated, but I wanted to bring these blues up a little bit. What I would personally do to this clip, I would add another hue. I would take this eyedropper and drop it on this green right here. Actually, no, I would take and drop it and extend it out over top of the green. A little bit too far right there. I'm gonna bring that about right there. I would bring this down a little bit like that. I would also come here, just because this clip is just different, I would bring the greens up even a little bit more to make them a little bit more sandy, yellowish green. Then I would click here, bring this up just to make those blues a little bit more like aqua greenish. Click here, bring the blues down just a little bit in the sky. This is pretty much looking like how I already did it. Even then, I would still take down the blues a little bit more, still take down the greens a little bit more. No, the greens are cool right there. Bring down the blues though a little bit more. And I think that looks cool. Honestly, this looks cool. I think that's a really crispy. really crispy, clean C-Log clip from the R5. I'm just wondering if you're probably getting bored yet, or if you're really finding this information valuable. If you are finding it valuable, make sure you slap the like button and let me know in the comments down below if I did a good job on this video, okay? Because I really wanted to help people understand how to color grade and tweak the colors after applying my Creative Ryan LUT. If you don't own it, I hope that this video is helping you. If it doesn't, I don't know what else to say. Maybe you should just consider getting the LUT. I just wanted to show you all that with white lighting is usually how I've always used this Creative Ryan LUT. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I started using a lot of RGB and blues and purples and red lighting and stuff like that in my shots. So there's the 5600 on that light. All right, let's add the 5600 on the bulb light. And this is typically what the lighting would look like in my videos over the past years before RGB was really introduced into my scene, like that LifeX light. I don't know if you saw that vlog a while ago. But once I started implementing RGB lights into my set, it started to be a little bit of a tweak and different colors being added on top of my Creative Ryan LUT. This is typically what my lighting would look like in my office or my spaces, because once Aperture sent me the lights, I had 5600 Kelvin lighting, and then Amaran came along with some stuff. This is Amaran light. I'm just trying to make this video a little bit more entertaining and show you all the differences when using my Creative Ryan LUT. Moving on. So this clip right here was shot on the Canon C70, a cinema line camera with C-Log 2, and it's super flat as you can see right here. All we're gonna do is click on this. We're gonna bring in that conversion LUT because I just don't feel like doing the contrast and saturation tweaks on my own right now. So let's hit settings. Let's go to camera LUT. Let's do Canon C-Log 2. That brings back pretty much the vibe here. And it looks good actually because it was stylized. It was orange lights in the back. I had a red tube light on me, and this shot was just really cool, right? Then if we add my color grade that I kind of did over top of this, which let me show you what's in this. Here is the Creative Ryan LUT. Then I did a color wheels adjustment, another hue saturation curves adjustment, and then a color wheels over top of everything, changing the shadows to a greenish color. So I'll show you what that looks like. Boom. Now this looks really dark, and the reason is it's because I color graded it with the conversion LUT from Canon C-Log 3. Even though I shot this in C-Log 2, I used the Canon Log 3 Cinema Gamut conversion LUT on this one, and boom, you do that, and then it lightens it up pretty much. Now the difference between these conversion LUTs is they design them for the specific log profiles, etc., but sometimes you can use different ones if it makes your footage look the way that you like it. Even though this was shot in C-Log 2, I didn't want to use the C-Log 2 conversion because I felt like it was just a little bit too dark. I'd use the Canon Log 3 one, and I think that it looked better. So here you go. You got this nice clean saturated clip and these greens added into the shadows to kind of mesh with the orange and red vibe. It just looks really good. So let me show you. Okay, so here's the flat. I added the Creative Ryan LUT over top of this at a 0.65. It's still pretty washed out looking and still needs contrast. So then I added another color wheels and added some shadows into it. As you can see right here, take it off, add it back. Kind of brought the blacks down, take that away, add it back. So I added some midtones into it, and then highlights I boosted up just to brighten the overall image. Then next I added a hue versus saturation curves. All I did was tweak the reds a little bit, made them a little bit more orangish red rather than like magenta red, I guess. Instead of being up here on this type of red, I brought it down to this more orangish red to kind of match that background. I also came out here and did the saturation versus sat again. I added this point on the blacks, and then instead of having them high, I wanted it to be pure black. It didn't do much of a difference, but I still think that it did something. Then I added another color wheels, and I added, as you can see, take it off, add it back, added greens into the blacks. And I think that that green kind of complements the orangish reddish vibe here. I think this looks really good. But all this was adding the Creative Ryan LUT on top of it after I did the conversion, adding a few tweaks on top of it. I just added some colors into the shadows, very simple, tweaked the reds here, and then added more contrast to make it not look as washed out. But overall, if I take my Creative Ryan LUT off, you see the big difference. This is just a great start to this clip. It adds in my color palette. It adds in some of the contrast that I've designed on the neutral picture profile, and then you just add in a little bit more. It still gives you room to tweak your log footage. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'm going to continue showing you, and hopefully this is something you're enjoying and potentially learning something from. Hopefully you've already learned something from it. Hopefully you also see that my Creative Ryan LUT is super valuable. There's a link down below where you can pick it up. Yes, I am offering this to you and potentially trying to sell you on it. So if you're interested, go check it out because I believe in it, and there's a lot of people, other people that believe in it as well, because a lot of people have picked this up. Let's get back to the Sony footage. If you have an FX30, that camera's super nice. If you have any Sony camera pretty much is nice. Any Canon camera, all these cameras are really good. Anyway, the inspector, all you do is camera LUT. I'm going to use the conversion. I could quickly bring contrast and saturation back into this with just color wheels or curves and add the saturation, but I'm just going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to add this, what is this, S-Log3, S-Gamut3 Cine, I believe. Brings it back. It still has a lot more room where you can bring contrast in and make it more punchy. I like that they give you a soft image where you can still dial in the contrast that you want, doesn't overdo it. I'm just going to do it from scratch. Color wheels. I'm going to bring the windows, coloring down, bring this waveforms up. What I did is I brung down the shadows. Let's see, until they hit that mark. About right there. Then I'm going to bring down the midtones. I'm eyeballing my image as well, just seeing what looks good. And I think the lower I bring this, I like it. Actually, it looks really dark now because the blacks, as you can see, are peeking down to the 0. So I'm going to bring those blacks back up, lift them up a little bit, give a little bit more detail back in the blacks. And then in these highlights, I'm actually going to bring these down a little bit too. I want to see more of this cloud up here rather than blowing it out. So let's just bring it down maybe to about right there. Then I'm going to grab a custom LUT, drag it over top, add my LUT to it. Creative Ryan LUT added at a full intensity, very contrasty, doesn't look good. So we're going to drag this back and find that point that looks good. As you can see, what my LUT does is it really rocks those greens out. It makes that white sandy pop. Oh man, it looks really good. And it brings the desaturation to this perfect point with the blues. I'm gonna say a 0.8 right there. So now that I've added my LUT, let's bring this waveforms back up. I'm gonna click on this and bring this up one notch at a time using these up arrows. So I'm gonna bring these blacks back up, lift it up a little bit, make it a little bit more soft and not as contrasty and punchy. So about right there actually looks good to me. I think this looks perfect. Sony FX30 S-Log3 footage, conversion LUT. Then I've done my color wheels processing, contrast and saturation being added into it. And then I've added my Creative Ryan LUT over top of it. And now I think this looks, honestly, it looks really good. This looks sick. It just has that swag. I love the way my greens and my blues look, and the oranges and the tans and kind of the whites. Just looks good. This looks fire. So I use my Creative Ryan LUT on any type of camera, whether it's Canon, Sony, Lumix, or any other one as well. The only reason I didn't mention any other camera brands is because I don't have any footage from other ones like Nikon or Fuji, etc. But I've used my Creative Ryan LUT on pretty much any of those brands of cameras and footage, whether it's log or it's just a standard or neutral picture profile, even on iPhone footage. Again, hopefully if you purchased this LUT already, I'm hoping you kind of understand how you can apply it and then tweak it onto your footage, regardless of which camera brand you're working with. Because like I said, I pretty much use this LUT on so many different projects, probably 90% of projects that I work on. That other 10%, I might be working on something super stylistic or unique and making or building out a new color palette for that specific project. That does happen sometimes. But for the quickness, for my vlogs, or for quickness on a project that I just don't feel like coloring, because let's be honest, those times do happen, I just drop my Creative Ryan LUT on it and get it gone. Moving on. This right here is a clip shot on Lumix. I shot it using Vlog. I'm gonna go to that camera LUT again. I'm using the conversion LUT once again to bring it back to a normal place. Panasonic Vlog, and cool. It's still super flat. They still give you plenty of room like Sony to still add in contrast. And then if I add all that stuff in, this is what I get. Now, personally, the Creative Ryan LUT looks good here. His skin tones look really good, but I would probably add just a little bit more color into the skin, a little bit more saturation. I love this screen grab right here. Thank you, that was perfect. So let's see, hue versus saturation. Let's get a dropper, let's drop it right here on his skin. Click on that and then hit the up arrow just to bring in. Let's just see if we add some more in. Don't want it to be too bright because we don't want his skin tone to look fake like this, or not fake, but just, so bring it down, but maybe about like right there. That looks good to me. But anyway, this is what I've done here. I've brought in my Creative Ryan LUT show. I've done this at full intensity, so not the 6.5, the full thing. This is showing a lot of desaturation. It's taking those blues out of his jacket, out of back here. If you see right there, the blues in his jacket, the blues just in the air, in the fog. His skin tones look good. It does take him down a little bit, and it tweaks him to more like of a brownish color, which I really like. It looks cool as is, right? Let's just say I want to tweak it a little bit more different stuff, which I did. as I said before, still a little washed out and it could use some contrast. All right, so let's add this in, this color wheels, shadows. I didn't do anything in the shadows. Midtones, if I take them out, add them back. I brought the midtones down just to bring the overall image and exposure down and a little bit darker, which looks good right there. I didn't do anything to the whites, but I did add some saturation into the clip right here just to bring back the blues just a tiny bit and his skin tone. Then I added another color wheels, and with this color wheels, I affected the shadows again. So if I take that out, you see, if I bring it back, you see. I added some blues, aqua blues into the shadows, and I did nothing else to the image. You know, it brings it back a little bit. It brings some life back into it. If I take it off, add it, it brings some life back into it. Those blues in the shadows always look good to me, especially in an environment where the background or the area like this office or here is just white or black and pure neutral colors. Last but not least, the hue saturation, as I just showed you, I brought that in and I just added a little bit more saturation into his skin tones to make his fingers and hands and stuff pop. And if you just go back, this is what you get. This is the Creative Ryan LUT with just a few little tweaks on Lumix vlog footage. So if you've been eyeing my Creative Ryan LUT for some time now, go check it out. Consider picking it up if you choose to. No obligations. You don't have to get it if you don't want to. I designed it for my vlogs initially, but I use it on so many different things. Probably about 85 to 90% of my projects, I use that Creative Ryan LUT on still. Whether it's at 100% or if it's at 50% or sometimes maybe 30% and I do something else to it, I kind of use it as a starting guide after I convert log footage, or even if I just shoot neutral, because sometimes I shoot music videos in neutral footage as well. I don't really care that much. I'm usually just kind of testing all different types of ideas. Sometimes I'll shoot neutral. If it's a really dark space, I might shoot log and try it, or I might shoot neutral just so I can see how much grain is going to be in it. I'm just pretty much trying to show you about my product and show you how I use it. Like I said in the beginning of this video, this is not for just anybody. This is for my friends and creators that have picked this Creative Ryan LUT up. So you probably own this if you're watching this video. So thank y'all so much for picking up this LUT. Thank you so much for watching this, and I hope that this really helped you. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop them down below in the comment section, or you can reach out to me directly and email me about anything, any type of questions. Creative Ryan LUT, thank you so much for picking it up. And if you haven't already, thanks for watching this video, because you definitely didn't have to. And I will see you guys in a new video coming soon. Where are we at? 41 minutes on recording screen time. I wonder how long this video is. This is a long video, a lot of talking. I need some more water. I need to go get a fresh cold water. If you watch to the end, man, you are the true MVP. Like, for real. Like, I appreciate you so much. And bubbly, whatever. You should send me like a case of water. They're probably not watching this. They're not going to watch my Creative Ryan LUT video this long, I'm pretty sure. But you never know. Somebody might.